Hey, friends, welcome back to the Called to Lead podcast. So, I'm recording this episode live from the beautiful Brights Creek Club up in North Carolina, not too far from Hendersonville, where I am excited to be planning my next team retreat. So, I am recording outside in this gorgeous weather, and I am excited to kind of be diving back into the podcast after taking a few weeks to spend some time with a friend and her family that were going through and still are going through a trial. But through the last few weeks, in particular, of really just walking through a season of uncertainty and of sadness and just trying to lean on the Lord for what's next, there has been one underlying theme that has shown through as I think the biggest take home for me through walking through this season, and I want to be able to share it with you because in thinking about this, I think it is one of the only secret weapons that we as believers have for not only our business, but also for our entire life and every aspect of our life, the good, the bad, the hard, everything. And that is the power of prayer. And so today's episode is going to be sharing the 4 ways that you can intentionally use the power of prayer in your life and in your business. And I'll be sharing a little bit more about why I think that is so important. And it's a little bit obvious, but I'm hoping that today's episode can really serve you well in helping for you to get back to basics and eliminating some overwhelm or uncertainty and confusion that you might have for the next steps in your business. So let's dive into today's episode. Okay, before we get into the 4 different steps of harnessing the power of prayer in your business, I want to kind of chat with you to check in and see where you are in your business, because I can tell you in mine, I feel a little bit overwhelmed and maybe even a little uncertain about some of the steps or actions that I should or shouldn't be taking in this business, having spent the last few weeks with my schedule and my intentions and everything just being completely rocked with helping a sweet friend and her family walk through a really, really tough season of illness. And I won't get into the details because it's their story to share, but I'm curious if you have ever been in that season where you have clarity around where you want to go and the goals and the things that you'd like to accomplish, but you might have confusion or more confusion than clarity around what it is that you should do next or how it's all going to come together. And so if you feel overwhelmed, or if you're like me and you're a bit of an overthinker, or again, if you have really big goals and you're just trying to figure out, well, how do I break down those goals and how do I make this happen? But more importantly, how do I make sure that I'm aligned with the Lord in walking those steps of faith in order to get there, to achieve those goals in your business? And so the simple solution, and yes, it is pretty obvious, but it's one that we cannot forget, and that is the power of prayer. And so of course, in this episode, because if you're listening to this, you are probably a network marketer or an entrepreneur of some kind, and you want to know how this can specifically relate to helping you grow in business. But I do want to share the story that was the kind of catalyst through this season that I've been walking in that made me realize that the power of prayer is something that I think a lot of us, myself included, forget to take advantage of in both the really big ways, but probably even more importantly, in some of the smaller, more day-to-day ways for your business. So when my life was kind of wrecked a few weeks ago, and if you haven't listened to my podcast, I think it's episode 96, where I talked about the directive from the Lord. Actually, funny enough, I was literally right here on this very porch, having come to a conference in Charlotte called She Speaks, where I literally felt in this moment in my Bible study on this back porch, this very porch right here, that the Lord was telling me that I needed to wipe my schedule clean and I needed to be available for what He had planned for me. Then, of course, I was like, okay, Lord, what does that mean? And I did just that. I cleared my schedule of any commitments that I had, and even the ones that I did not fully clear, He kind of cleared for me. That's the way I guess He works. It's like when we think we can hang on to certain things, He'll make it clear for us, right? But then what happened, and again, if you've listened to that episode, you already know this, but I had some pretty earth-shattering news from a dear friend, and I realized in that moment that availability in my schedule was there for the sole purpose and reason for me to be available to help them in that season. So that word availability has been something so powerful. But also through that and saying, okay, Lord, I'm available, and telling, this family, like, okay, I can help you. I had to also lean into obedience. And so the word obedient was really powerful. And in order to do that, in order to be fully obedient to what the Lord had planned for me that day, or to even know how to face the next step in serving this family through this difficult season of uncertainty and fear and sadness, which I think I can be a little bit more transparent because we have put it out there. It's a dear friend who is one of my best friends. She's also a teamie of mine in the business. She's also my hairstylist. She's amazing, but she's walking through cancer, and she faced the biggest battle of her 5-year journey with metastatic breast cancer. And again, I knew that I was meant to be there to help serve them. And it's honestly one of the most fulfilling, also one of the hardest things that I've ever had to do. And she's actually doing a lot better. Praise God. He has worked miracle after miracle. And that's a part of what I want to talk to you guys about today. And he did it not necessarily in this like big, take up your mat and walk, although literally that's kind of what happened. I'm not going to lie. But he did it in an even more powerful way by answering very, very specific, very, very timely prayers that myself and those of us that were in the situation chose to do. And what I mean by that is we just took each and every day, and whatever that need was for the day, or whatever the request, from the family was that day, we would fervently pray to the Lord specifically that would happen. And I realized about a week in that time after time, day after day, he was showing up with an answer to that prayer. And most of the time it was yes. Sometimes it was no. And some of those prayers aren't still yet answered, including the most important prayer, which is the prayer for miraculous healing for my sweet friend and her family. But what I noticed when I took the time to look back over that week and literally make a spreadsheet, y'all. I made a literal spreadsheet, which if you know me well, this won't surprise you because I love spreadsheets. And some people I know are overwhelmed by them, but I absolutely love them. But I literally made a spreadsheet of every single prayer that we either had prayed, very specific, or were actively praying, or the things that kind of came to mind that we needed to specifically pray about. And then I made a column for yes, to put a big X when he did answer those prayers. No, for the ones, and there were, a few in there that it was an answer no. And then the ones that we are still waiting on an answer. And what was cool is I would check in on that spreadsheet like every week or so, and I would be able to often move the not yets over to the yes columns. And a lot of these things, and I'm not going to share with you the specific line items. There's over 50 on this spreadsheet, and I'm sure there are even more that I could add even to this day. But I'm telling you, when we prayed those prayers, they were things that we thought were impossible, that it would be a miracle for them to happen. And not only did they happen, but I think if I were not to take the time to look back on those specific answered prayers and really acknowledge that the Lord was the one that provided those miracle answered prayers, then it would be really easy to miss, because now, weeks later, she's doing pretty well. And, there's still a lot of uncertainty, but guess what? That leads us right back to the entire purpose of what I'm talking to you guys about, is being obedient and being prayerful for those next steps in her journey in battling this cancer. So I definitely invite all of you guys to join me in praying for her family and for all of the prayers on that list and any that are yet to come. But what's the purpose of me sharing this with you? It's because I realized in doing the spreadsheet, I was like, why am I not doing this in every aspect of my life? Why am I not doing this in my business? Why am I not literally keeping track of the specific requests that I am bringing to the Lord? And I realized in doing that, and it's something that I do want to do, that I should invite you guys to do it alongside me, because I feel like for those of you guys who listen to this podcast, whether or not you're kind of seeking a little bit more about the faith, which we're going to talk more specifically in the next few episodes as I get closer to my 100th episode. I cannot even believe it. We're going to be diving pretty deep into some faith stuff and even kind of facing some head-on, I guess, resistance, if you will, to the true gospel that we will get to in a little bit, but more to come on that. But I wanted to invite you guys today into the 4 steps. And I also don't think that it's a coincidence, because I don't believe in coincidences, that the sermon this past week, this Sunday at my church, was all about the power of prayer. So I will link that sermon for you guys if you want to dive a little bit deeper on prayer, just because I think it's super relevant. But it solidified my decision to share the 4 steps for how you can harness prayer for your business today. So let's dive into those 4 steps. And again, they're really, really simple, but sometimes it is going back to basics and keeping it really, really simple in your business. In fact, my entire team name is Keep It Simple Sister. And so I believe in the power of simplicity. And sometimes we just need a check, and I need it too, friends, to be able to stay aligned with the Lord in the big goals in your business. So here are my 4 steps. Step 1, start your day with intention and in the Word. So if you've been following me back over on Instagram, and yes, I am back on Instagram, though that is one of the areas that I am really leaning on the Lord right now to just guide me daily, because I also felt on this back porch call to come step back into social media, but stepping away from social media for the last few weeks in serving this family. Unfortunately, I got out of the habit of consistency, and it's really hard to get back on the wagon. I say that to say that I am wanting to do this myself, but practice what I preach with what I'm telling you guys today. But essentially, it was starting my day with intention and in the Word as I'm reading through the Bible in a year. And I'm on day 64 today, which is really exciting. And I've been able to keep up with it for the very first time. So this is my second time reading through the Bible in a year. The first time I got way behind, and it took me probably a year and a half to make it happen. This time I am right on track. I might get behind a day or so, but I can also drop the link to the little Bible reading plan I don't comment every day, but when something comes to my heart, I'll comment on there. But starting my day with intention and a plan, but most importantly, with connecting with the Lord through His Word, it has been one of the most powerful ways for me to stay aligned in this tough season, or in the season of uncertainty, or leaning into obedience in my business. And if you're not doing that, why not? It can take as little as 15 minutes, and it can be the most important 15 minutes of your day. I've been spending probably closer to an hour a day doing this, and I can tell you that it is by far the most powerful hour of my day in terms of doing it. And I've never been more hungry for the Word. And I feel like I've never felt more aligned with the Lord's purpose in my life because of it. So that's step 1, is start your day with intention and time in the Word. So number 2, and this kind of involves what exactly should we be praying for? Because if you listen to that sermon that I shared, that can be one of the most overwhelming things, like how eloquent should I be praying? But the Lord's Prayer is definitely a great example of in general, the things that you can and should be praying for. And I'll let Pastor Marcus from that dive a little bit deeper if you want that. But for me, in this season, and one of the most powerful specific prayers that you can pray in your business is the prayer for wisdom. So I talk a lot about James on this podcast, because that is my favorite book of the Bible. And in James 1, verse 5, it says, "If any of you lacks wisdom, you should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to you. But when you ask, you must believe and not doubt, because the one who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind." So what should you be praying for? Specifically, wisdom is a prayer that it says right there. James is the brother of Jesus, and it says that it will be given to you. And it also says that it's given generously without finding fault. So you might beat yourself up over not having done the right thing in the past, or you might not even feel like you're right with God in this moment. But I'm telling you, if you just ask Him for wisdom for your next step, or for that next idea, I know it sounds frivolous, but it's true. If you get very specific and ask for wisdom on what you should post on Instagram, or how you should spend your day, or the next hour of working in your business, or your next podcast episode, or your next video idea, or the person. Lord, literally give me the person that I might need the product or service that I offer, or might want to join me in business. If you get really, really specific about that and you ask for wisdom, again, he will give it to you. Well, you just need to ask, and you need to believe that when he does show up with that name or with that idea or that inspiration to take that next step in your business, that you have to trust that it's from him because you prayed that prayer, and you need to take action on it in faith and not doubt. And when you do, that's going to build up that faith muscle that you'll be able to use again and again and again, which is why, again, it's one of the most powerful secret weapons that you can use in your business. So if you don't know what to pray for, ask for wisdom. So number 3 is be as specific as possible. And I've already touched on this a little bit, but if you can get to where, like I kind of did with those specific prayers for my friend and her family, where there is either it's a yes answer or a no answer or a not yet, pretty much any prayer that you ask, with that being one of the responses, he will give it to you. And I remember telling a friend this recently, and they kind of were like, well, obviously that's going to be the the result for any of those prayers. But if it's a not yet, that's where you have to lean into one of the fruits of the Spirit, which is patience, and know that he will give you that answer in due time. And if you just ask it, and if you again believe in your heart that he will give you that answer, and even if it's a no, if you can trust that that is a part of his bigger purpose and plan for you, if you just get specific, whether that's on a spreadsheet, whether that's in a journal when you're doing your daily intention and time in the Word, or maybe in the Notes app on your phone, but if you get specific, then watch what happens. Watch what happens and make note of it, and don't brush it over or gloss it over, because I'm telling you, some of these things that seem like miracles after, or that seem so like normal after the fact, they weren't things that we could see possible just weeks ago. And so how many things like that are happening in your life and in your business that you're missing because you're not getting really specific about your prayers? And then the last step is track them. Okay. So take the time to write it down. And again, I kind of have already talked about this. I've kind of meshed some of these 4 steps together for you guys. But if you take the time to make note of it, and there's even a book, and shoot, it just came to my mind, but it's called like 1,000 Little Prayers or 1,000 something like that. And I want to say it's by an author, I think her name's Ann Voskamp. And this is exactly what she did. She just started to look for the Lord in everything around her, and she started to make note of it and literally write it down, again, whether it's in a journal or something, to where you can see and take note of the power of the Lord working in your life. And that is what you're going to lean on when you go through these hard times or seasons in your life or in your business, is the times where he's been there for you. And you can know that he's never going to leave you or forsake you, and that he's right there with you every step along the way if you invite him into that journey through the power of prayer. So thank you guys so much for listening to this episode today. I'd love to know what you think about it, and feel free to hop on over into the Called to Lead community over on Telegram. You can always text the word podcast to my business cell, which is 912-405-8912, and it'll shoot you a link right over there. But that's the best way to stay in touch. But also don't forget to subscribe to this podcast. If you're enjoying it, hit the subscribe or download or whatever it is button on wherever you're listening, to where this is going to send you a notification every time I publish a new episode, which is weekly. And if you have extra time, it would mean the world if you could leave me a review, because that's how all of the algorithms make more people hear this message, and it can kind of spread the word a little bit. And plus, I would love to know what you think. So take the time to let me know by leaving a review, and don't forget to join the Called to Lead community over on Telegram as well. So thank you guys again. I hope you have a beautiful week, and stay tuned for more goodness to come.